All right, so let's move on to, we've got a bunch of new reporting about how the Tim Walz versus Josh Shapiro decision went down. And some of this is very interesting. So let's put CNN up on the screen here. They had one of the sort of most in-depth deep dives into the interview and vetting process. Their headline is "The Blue Walls: How a Low-Key Midwestern Governor Shot to the Top to Be Harris's VP Pick." And a couple things that are of note here. Number one, apparently just the vibes with Shapiro were off, and the vibes with Walz were apparently very good. Walz came in and she was like, okay, well, what do you see as the role of vice president? And he was like, whatever you want it to be. And she asked him, okay, well, do you want to be the last person in the room when decisions are being made? And he's like, if you want me there. So it was very, put me in, coach, I'm ready to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll be the quote unquote happy warrior. So that was the vibe with Walz. With Shapiro, it sort of echoed the concerns that Fetterman had put out publicly, that this man is very ambitious, that he may overshadow you. He had a bunch of questions for her about like, oh, well, what would my role be? And trying to carve out specifically the parameters of what that would look like. One source familiar with the meeting said it was a striking contrast between the two individuals. But another thing I noted in this piece was the quiet, organized support campaign for Walz that was unfolding behind the scenes that involved apparently Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. So here's what they say. They don't have a lot of details, but this is the lines from CNN. They say Walz was propelled by support from across the Democratic Party, progressive and moderate factions alike. We saw, for example, publicly Joe Manchin coming out and praising him in a sophisticated campaign guided by some of the party's most seasoned operatives. He had former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on his side, old allies from his 12 years in Congress representing a rural Minnesota district, as well as glowing words from former President Obama, who said in a statement Tuesday of Walz, he has the values and the integrity to make us proud. They go on to say Obama also served as a sounding board for Vice President Harris to talk through how she was thinking about it. I'm sure he was just a sounding board, Saagar, just listening, not offering any sort of shaping words or guidance on that. So I found that very noteworthy. That's the only place I saw that reporting about Obama's involvement here. They did mention that Shapiro came with some drama because of the comments that he had made with regard to protesters being Palestinian pro-Palestine protesters being akin to the KKK. One of the Democrats involved said no one wanted to rip that scab back open. So I think there were also concerns that because of how stridently he had come out in support of Israel's prosecution of the war in Gaza and specifically against the protesters, that was just a can of worms that they didn't really want to open. So I thought that was all very interesting that, the fit was different. The way they handled the interview was very, very different. And we also saw some reporting, Saagar, that, there was this like Josh Shapiro hype video that had come out that the Philadelphia mayor had put out. I think because he made such a sort of aggressive, and the people around him made such an aggressive play, including this highly produced video, including trying to create this narrative of his inevitability. I mean, I know if it was me, I'd be like, you think this is a done deal, that you've just got this in the bag? I know that I would find that to be very off-putting if I was making that choice.
Well, and I also I think it was a John Favreau who used to write Obama's speeches, one of the Pod Save Bros. Even he was making fun of Josh Shapiro's Obama mannerisms. That has to grate people like Obama.
If you're literally Obama? Yeah,
I mean, Obama is, what do we really know about Obama? At the end of the day, he's in it for himself. He's probably one of the great arch narcissists in American history. He's very good at getting himself elected and getting himself a lot of media. And so, in this case, it probably pissed him off, that Josh Shapiro was copying him. More and more that we see and learn from behind the scenes. I do think that was probably the biggest, you called it, credit to you, which is that he is just so extraordinarily ambitious. He doesn't know how to be a number two man. Tim Walz allegedly told Kamala Harris he has no desire to be president. And that's one of the reasons why he was picked as the vice president. Reminiscent of the Dick Cheney pick by George W. Bush. W was a very insecure man, very, very much like Kamala. And he didn't want anybody to overshadow him. He didn't know what to do. They'd been burned by Dan Quayle because he was literally an idiot under HW. And he's like, so who do I pick? And they're like, oh, you should pick somebody like Cheney because the thing about Cheney is he always loved being the number two man. And so he, as the NBA president, president, it really lit him up, this idea that you have a non-ambitious person who will help you run stuff for you. And I've worked out badly for the country, but
he did run stuff.
For W, that actually was the ideal position. He didn't really work that hard. He wasn't, he didn't like to think all that much. So I think that Walz kind of pitched himself in a similar way of, I'm not gonna try and upstage you. I'm just your number 2 man. I'm here to help you to the best of my ability. I also don't think we can discount, now in retrospect, how much his Washington connections really worked out for him. Helped Nancy Pelosi become Speaker of the House. Pelosi's going to bat for him. A lot of his House colleagues loved him. In terms of the people, I think Amy Klobuchar was going to bat for him in the Senate. So, having people in Washington who have a good relationship with you, especially when Josh Shapiro is way more of an unknown, he's never been here in DC, I think that probably helped him, much more.
Yeah, I think that's right, because she knew Shapiro a little better than she knew Walz going into this process, but I don't think they were like close either. The person she was probably closest to was Roy Cooper, who had taken himself out of consideration. But this was a very condensed timeline. So if this is someone who you're going to have to potentially govern with, where can you get that comfort that this is going to be someone that you're going to be able to get along with? And so the fact that Walz had so many people from across the entire ideological spectrum being like, it's just a great guy. Joe Biden said something, he just likes, people just like this guy. And to me, it's an incredible testament to how, I guess, how well he's able to pull these things off, that he said he doesn't want to be president, and it was credible enough that she believed him, because
it's like, bro, come on.
I mean, all these people are ambitious. Josh Shapiro may wear it more heavily, but this is a governor of an important state. He's obviously excited to be in the vice presidential pick. Like, he obviously has some ambitions of his own. So the fact that he was able to pull off that line that, no, of course, I don't really want to be president, I think is a testament to the political abilities that he has. Point. He comes off as like a genuine, nice guy.
Even though he's been a professional politician since 2005, for like 20 years.
He still comes off as that, high school teacher, the nice guy coach, whatever. And so he's able to pull that off. That's one thing that has been insane to me, Saagar, is the number of people online who think that Josh Shapiro is a better politician than Tim Walz, just like on the, oratory, whatever. It's crazy to me, because when I see Josh Shapiro, all I can see is the cheap Obama knockoff. And so, Walz has he's got his own thing going, and it feels genuine whether you like him or not, and whether you agree with his positions or not. So just on the pure political talent, I find that assessment to be totally crazy.
I'll make the Shapiro pitch, I guess, which is don't forget that the Obama knockoff either won or almost won the state of Iowa for the Democratic primary in 2020, which was Pete Buttigieg. The Obama knockoff works quite well.
In the Democratic primary.
Look, I have a very low opinion of Democratic boomers. No offense, but you guys love yourselves some Obama-esque type figure. Beto O'Rourke is another one who people like to.
These people didn't do all that well, Saagar.
yeah, but the Democratic elite love them. So in that sense, I'm saying that's who the audience and all that plays to.
Yeah.
And when you combine that to both them, look, there's undeniable. At that Philadelphia rally, he got a massive pop. People loved him. Yeah. Even the reporters on the ground were like, the people who are here, they are obsessed with Josh Shapiro. Now, a lot of that is also just general Democratic enthusiasm. He's got the high favorability in the state of Pennsylvania. Ultimately, what the Harris campaign found, and I'm really fascinated because I don't know to what extent this is true, they didn't believe that he could translate his personal popularity to the state of the ticket and ultimately help them win the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe, but I just don't know how the decision was made and how much data was there. I haven't even seen you since Tim Walz was picked.
Yeah.
Kind of my theory was, and it kind of bears this out too in today's toss-ups, I really believe that they no longer view the Midwest as the tipping point. Because if you look at a 270 win map and you play with it, you can have Kamala lose the state of Pennsylvania, but win Georgia. As long as she wins Nevada, that's 273 electoral votes. And so with the Sun Belt, with younger people, black voters who are a lot more animated, and you got Trump literally attacking Brian Kemp in the state of Georgia, I think Georgia's a lot more in play than it was previously.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about that.
And if you've got, a chance in Nevada and in Georgia, you don't have to win Pennsylvania as much. And Michigan and Wisconsin have always been razor thin. PA, even though it is the most likely tipping point state, you don't necessarily need it in a world where the Sun Belt is way more in play. And Tim Walz is the most beloved figure by these white suburban liberals. They love him. And so if you have those people who are coming out to vote in Maricopa County and in Fulton County in Atlanta, maybe you don't need to go after the Midwest as much.
I mean, let's not forget though, Tim Walz, when he was in the House, the district that he ran in, he's actually the only Democrat who has won that district in decades. He outperformed Hillary in 2016 by some 18 points.
Yes.
Trump won that district handily in 2016, and Tim Walz also won it by, I think Trump won it by 13, and Tim Walz still won it by 3. So, he does have demonstrated ability in Midwestern sort of swingy areas. I believe his district was sort of like half suburban, half rural. And so, listen, are Democrats going to win back rural America with Tim Walz? No. But all he needs to do is hold on to the percent of the white rural vote that Joe Biden did, and they win. That's all they have to do, because all the other coalitions are kind of coming back together. So I think they feel like he is an effective messenger in terms of that. And I just feel like there was a lot of reporting that they did do some significant poll testing. And I think if it was clear that if you've got Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania is in the bag, I think that would have been very difficult to resist. Very difficult. But the reporting suggests that they didn't really see that Josh Shapiro helped them in Pennsylvania at all, that there wasn't a big electoral impact, whether you put Tim Walz or Josh Shapiro on the ticket. And so that freed her up to go with the person that she had the more personal fit with, and also who, he really leaned into in the state of Minnesota. They really leaned into the post-Roe v. Wade environment. So they feel like he's a very effective messenger there. And then you got Pelosi and Obama saying, hey, this is your guy. I think that made it all a very compelling package.
I think you're totally right. I recommend people watch the Counterpoint segment from yesterday about the Steve Kornacki segment, because the quibble I have, and I think, given the data, it's fair, is that he won in a very different environment. When you've got, as politics continues to bifurcate on the rural and suburban divide, it's very clear he activated more white liberals, and he didn't win back the same people that he ran when he was Congress. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't know how to talk to those people, but he definitely didn't win them in 2022 whenever he was up on the ballot. Now, can he help bring some of those people over? Maybe. I mean, this is the case that a lot of the pundits were making against JD. When you look at the swings that he had in some of these working class districts, he actually drove up the vote in some Republican areas, but he didn't win by the margin that he was supposed to win in the rural working class voters. So
he underperformed Trump in terms of
Trump in
white working class.
It's complicated because Tim Ryan was on the ballot, but regardless, I would not say it was a perfect showing for JD. Let's all be honest, right? He only won by 6. I think Trump won by 8. With Tim Walz, what Steve Kornacki was saying is if you look at those rural districts that he was supposed to activate, it just didn't materialize last time around. That doesn't mean that rhetorically he can't try and hold on, like you said. But any fantasy if he's going to flip votes, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. So if you've got, like I said, he doesn't have to do better. He doesn't have to do better than the Joe Biden totals in those areas, and I think that's probably what they're aiming for. Go to B4, guys, because this was interesting. There was a Marist poll that showed that Josh Shapiro had elevated negatives and was underwater in favorability with Gen Z voters in particular. So if you're looking at polling, if you're the Kamala Harris team that says Shapiro doesn't really help you in Pennsylvania, and he brings this negative to the ticket with regard to Gen Z voters, and I think this has to be largely because of how aggressively he talked about the pro-Palestine protesters and his positioning on Israel in general, then you're saying, okay, well, why do I want to bring a negative onto the ticket when Walz has this cross-ideological support across the entire Democratic spectrum, from Joe Manchin to Bernie Sanders, literally. And I think it also is a statement on how the rejuvenated union movement threw their weight around in this process too. We forget to talk about them, but Sean Fain made it very clear, the new leader of the UAW, who's been very strong and actually was at that rally in Detroit yesterday. He said, listen, I want Andy Bashir or Tim Walz. And he even said, listen, I'm with them no matter what, but those are the two that we really trust. And I do think that the fact that labor unions didn't like Mark Kelly. Labor unions did not like Josh Shapiro because of his charter school stances, another very Obama-esque position, by the way.
Yes.
I think that also hindered them because, again, you're talking about, okay, a fracturing within the Democratic coalition. You're talking about enthusiasm. You're talking about reopening wounds that you don't really want to have to reopen. And so, you know, when you look at that picture and then you also think about, oh, she just liked Tim Walz better when she met with him, the choice makes a lot of sense and does not have to be about anti-Semitism as is being insisted by many across the board.
That's definitely a fun one. Although that discourse has mostly been killed at this point, so let's just put it into the
so I only brought it up here briefly at the end so we can all move forward with our lives.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's go on to the attacks. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.